Mehdi Hassan had on a representative from the Israeli government to talk about what's currently going on in Israel and Palestine. Take a look. He does a pretty decent job calling out his nonsense.
Given 500 Palestinian children were killed in the 2014 Gaza war, according to both the UN and human rights groups, how worried should we be tonight that Israel is about to launch another full-scale assault, maybe an invasion of Gaza?
Thank you, Mehdi, for inviting me. I think the question you're asking is something to refer to Hamas spokespeople, because eventually the reality on the ground is that quiet will be responded by quiet. If Hamas is going to continue threatening Israeli civilians, firing rockets indiscriminately towards Israeli towns, then we're going to be forced to respond and respond forcefully. And by the way, this is not just Israel. Any country in the world would have done the same if their cities were attacked under constant attack by rockets, by terrorist organizations.
I mean, any country in the world, most countries in the world are not in charge of a decades-long military occupation. But you mentioned Hamas rocket strikes. I think we can both agree that Hamas firing rockets at civilian buildings is wrong. Can we both agree on that? I think we can agree on that, right? That's common ground for us.
Hamas firing rockets at civilian population is totally wrong. There is fully agreement with us on that.
Agreed. You got me on. We're 100%. We agree. And yet today you had a 13-story residential apartment building in Gaza targeted by the Israeli Air Force destroyed. How is that not anything other than a war crime, a deliberate attack on a civilian target?
You know, I think it's actually very disfortunate that people are trying to equate the IDF response to Hamas as a terrorist organization. Israel acts in accordance with the international law. We target only Hamas targets, and every target that we're firing at is being chosen very carefully. We do that with accordance of international law in order to minimize civilian casualties and collateral damage. And you know what? We're the only country and the only organization, the only ones in the Middle East that actually care about international law. Hamas doesn't care. Palestinian Islamic Jihad doesn't care. And every loss of life is unfortunate. I agree 100%.
You flattened. I mean, we don't have time to get into an argument about international law. Suffice to say that most human rights groups criticize Israel for violating human rights law, and they criticize Hamas. But you leveled an apartment building. I think you gave them a 1-hour warning to get out of the building. Do you think that's in line with humanitarian law to bomb a civilian apartment building in Gaza?
You know, Hamas is using the Palestinians in Gaza as human shields. They're firing rockets at Israel from within centers of civilian population.
You need to understand, they say this exact same thing every time there's a conflict, and then after the fact, when people look at the casualties, we get the reality. So the last time they did this in 2014, and by the way, a top Israeli official once called this cutting the grass, making the Palestinians fall in line. In 2014 Operation Protective Edge, 80% of Palestinians killed by Israeli strikes are civilians, UN report says. So this is what happens. Every time Israel attacks a number of civilian targets in Gaza, and they go, whoa, what? It's totally within international law, bro, because Hamas is using that to store weapons, and they're also using human shields. Now, by the way, I just want you to think about this in any other context. If you heard there was some sort of terrorist gang that had taken over your kid's school, and the police decided, we're just going to bomb the whole school, would you be like, okay? I mean, what are they going to do? The terrorist group has my kid as their human shield. So they had to do what they had to do. They had to drop the bombs. You would never accept that. You'd say, what, are you fucking crazy? You have to care about the civilians first and foremost. That's what you have to do. But for some reason, Israel makes this argument like it's convincing. Like, oh, sure, they may have been using human shields, but we had to bomb the civilians anyway because we have to get the bad guys. What? So the argument is, what are we supposed to do? We have to bomb. They gave us no choice. But you do have a choice. You decided to bomb and also kill civilians. That's what you did. Then they bullshit, oh yeah, well, we dropped pamphlets that said, you know, hey, we're going to bomb this in a little bit, and we gave people an hour to get out, so what more do you want from us? I want you to not violate international law. And by the way, it is untrue that this doesn't violate international law. Of course it violates international law. You're not allowed to target civilian infrastructure, period. And they always do. And then we always come back after and find out, oh my God, 80% of the Palestinians killed were civilians. What are you doing? They don't care about the Palestinian civilian casualties. They don't care. And then I want to give you some more numbers the last time this happened. So you would think, the way everybody talks about this, you would think like, oh my God, there's extreme carnage, and it's either equal carnage between the Palestinians and Israelis, or the Israelis are the ones getting slaughtered, and so Israel has to respond like this. Last time this happened in 2014, more than 2,100 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip. 2,100 Palestinians, 80% of them civilians, 500 of them children. How many died on the Israeli side? 66 soldiers and 7 civilians. You have one military that is backed by the most powerful military in human history, that technologically way outpaces the other side. This isn't a war. It's a slaughter. That's what it is. And you cannot target civilian infrastructure on purpose. You just can't. I don't want to hear it. If you're bombing a power plant, if you're bombing a school, if you're bombing an apartment building, I don't want to hear it. You can't do it, and there is no bullshit rationalization after the fact. Oh, we had to do it. Even if Hamas is firing rockets from those places, which, by the way, I don't believe them that that's what's happening, those rockets they land in the middle of a fucking cow field. That's what happens, which is why the civilian casualties on the Israeli side are so low, and it's good that those civilian casualties are low. I actually care about all civilians. But don't bullshit us. Oh my God, a Hamas rocket landed in an open field. Now let's go level an apartment building. Now let's go kill 500 more children and more civilians and level civilian infrastructure. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And if I was president, I would immediately cut off all subsidies to Israel and immediately cut off all arms to Israel. We gave them, in 2016, we gave them $38 billion. We give them so much funding and military support. And then we sit back as they continue wantonly violating international law. It's an apartheid state. They're doing an illegal occupation. They are expanding settlements as we speak, trying to do evictions from East Jerusalem as we speak, kicking Palestinians out of their own homes. And they're doing an ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. And we still have people bullshitting us right to our face going on TV. Credit to Mehdi Hassan for calling them out. But listen, the bullshit is so thick in real time that people do walk away feeling like, well, what are you going to do? It's a conflict and both sides have problems and all that. Well, guess what? The younger generation is not buying it. The younger generation is not buying it. They see through this Hasbara from a mile away. And now people are sympathetic to the plight of the Palestinians because it's pretty obvious the power imbalance and what's going on and who's violating international law. And I said it before, I'll say it again. The fact of the matter is this. People always say Israel has a right to self-defense. Israel has a right to self-defense. Israel has a right to self-defense. Well, flip that question back on these people. Do Palestinians have a right to self-defense? Now, they probably won't answer that, or they'll give the wrong answer. But the right answer is, of course, yes, they do have a right to self-defense. And the fact of the matter is this. If somebody comes into your home illegally and says, I'm taking everything you have, do you have a right to self-defense in that moment? I think you do. I think you do. And any reasonable person would say yes to that. And so that's the truth they can't bullshit their way out of. You can't do an illegal occupation and expand the settlements and do planned evictions against international law, an ethnic cleansing, and then, feign outrage when there's some pushback. Can't do it. Can't do it. Cannot do it. Killing civilians is wrong. Full stop. Full stop. That includes when Israel does it. And like we just demonstrated, last time it was 80% civilian casualties, and it will be about the same this time. But they're going to bullshit you to your face as the children killed ticks up and the civilians killed tick up. And you're watching it happen right now.